Okay, I'm back with another channel surfing wreck. Depending on your age demographic, this show could be totally obvious or downright obscure. I chose a random episode from earlier in the show that's a good representation of the show's overall vibe, but you can really jump in anywhere. Such is the nature of an episodic show. So, what's on tonight? Rocko's Modern Life, Rocko's Happy Sack.
It's the world premiere of Nickelodeon's newest Nicktoon, Rocko's Modern Life!
What in the blazes?
There was this really good Vanity Fair article written in 2018 after the revival movie was announced. Inside the barely contained chaos of a Nickelodeon classic that delves into the history of Joe Murray, the show's creator, as well as the behind the scenes of the writer's room. It's an interesting read if you want to check it out. Fake executive memos were distributed, mocking the feedback from Nickelodeon higher-ups. Banana equals not funny, one read. Cheese equals funny. Wait a minute.
Hey, Rocko, which is funnier, bananas or cheese?
Cheese, Hef. Definitely cheese.
I am the cheese. I am the best character on the show.
Anyway, Rocko's Modern Life is technically a kids show, but I honestly find it more relatable as an adult. It was infamous for having suggestive adult humor that the writers somehow snuck past the censors, but what really went over my head as a kid and as a teen was the social commentary. This is one of those shows that hits differently depending on whatever stage of life you're in. Rocko's Modern Life follows the titular character, a wallaby named Rocko, as he navigates through the struggles of young adulthood. It's basically a satirical slice of life with a cynical and surrealist edge.
Nickelodeon presents Rocko. He's one wallaby against the world, and the world is winning.
The animation style was Salvador Dali meets mid-century mod, all zigzags and odd angles with a boisterous palette. Its fever dream of an opening sequence was accompanied by a theme tune written in the campy style of the B-52s. From the second season on, it was performed by the band itself. The show originally aired on Nickelodeon back in 1993 with the intent by the network to bring on edgier cartoonists, a direct contrast to the basically glorified toy commercials that was 80s kids cartoons.
How toyetic can you get?
Toyetic is a word created by marketing people. It means an object or device featured in a cartoon that could easily become a mass-produced toy.
And as such, the network granted Murray significant creative freedom. That's probably how the aforementioned adult innuendos kept getting snuck in.
Oh baby, oh baby, oh baby.
You can see elements of the show's style in an old MTV bump, as well as his independent film My Dog Zero. Linda Semensky, a Nickelodeon exec at the time, had a vision for the channel. After years of children's television being dominated by low-quality animated product churned out by large studios, she was hoping to bring on auteur creators to make cooler, hipper, smarter kids shows.
1 year ago, Saturday night TV was a vast, desolate, unwatchable wasteland for kids. 1 year ago, Nickelodeon changed all that with Snick. 4 prime shows, 1 orange couch, and a place to turn to on Saturday nights.
Murray assembled a crew of seasoned animators who'd worked on the likes of The Simpsons, Cool World, and Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and voice talent from the local comedy circuit. The voice actors were local stand-up comedians who had never done voice acting before, notably Tom Kenny 6 years before he became famous for SpongeBob, and Carlos Alzaraki, who later played Garcia in Reno 911 and voiced the Taco Bell Chihuahua.
Yo quiero Taco Bell.
The real legacy of Rocko's Modern Life is how many members of its team went on to create or take key positions working on some of the most important animated programs of the next 2 decades. Most significantly of all was Steven Hillenburg, who took over the last season of Rocko after Murray left. He later went on to create SpongeBob SquarePants, where he recruited a ton of people from Rocko's.
Joe Murray, who created Rocko's Modern Life, saw my films and he asked me if I would like to direct on his show. And that experience was really important for me because I really wouldn't have known how to put a show together without that experience.
I want to highlight something that I think this show does really well, and that's personifying metaphors. As an example, in the egg episode, Filbert is racing the stork to the hospital, and the stork is doing what he can to trip him up. As a kid, I'd watch this scene like, wow, what a dick. But as an adult, I realized that the writers are depicting a figurative metaphor in a literal way. Filbert is literally racing to the hospital before his wife delivers. Also, something else I really appreciate about this episode, so Heifer and Filbert are basically like gay dads fostering this baby together, and they bicker about what gender it's going to be. The thing I appreciate is that, in this context, they're friends, and it's funny to watch them argue, but if it was Filbert and his wife fighting, it'd read totally different. It's like, oh, mommy and daddy are fighting again. Or like that one couple at a dinner party that clearly hate each other and you're just sitting awkwardly in your seat trying to tap into deeply buried superpowers of invisibility or teleportation, anything to get you the fuck out of there. Another example, there's an episode where Heifer decides to move out of his parents' house in an effort to become more independent. He's used to having his mom pick up after him. Without her there, his bachelor pad quickly turns rancid. This is personified by having anthropomorphic roaches take over his apartment. A personified roach infestation. Bleh. Before I move on, I wanted to mention that this show came out like 30 years ago, but a lot of the social commentary and anti-capitalist themes are still relevant today. There's the ever-looming skyscraper conglomero, a conglomerate megacorporation with the tagline, "We own you," featured throughout the show. There's one episode in particular that follows Rocko's crotchety boomer neighbor, Mr. Bighead. It first shows him as a young man in the dawn of adulthood, so full of hope and optimism for the future. As he begins his career at Conglomero, he thought if he worked hard, he would climb through the ranks in no time. Well, cut 30 years later, and he's still at the same desk, disillusioned and visibly beaten down by the system. His boss is such a fucking asshole! He'll call him into his office and tease him with a potential promotion, then give it to someone else. "I called you into my office today just to let you know I hired someone else instead of you."
Face it, Bighead, you're too old.
There's another great article I found that analyzes the show through anti-capitalist/Marxist lens, specifically commodity fetishism. Commodities are alive, acting and relating to us as social beings.
I'm sorry, old friend. I didn't mean to be cruel to you.
I alluded to it earlier, but this show hits different depending on what stage of life the viewer is in. From childhood, where kids are entertained by the Looney Tunes-esque slapstick humor, to young adulthood, where 20-somethings are figuring out how to navigate the quote-unquote real world, to seasoned adults who are abused by their bosses and caught up in the drudge and hopelessness of adulthood. My point being, the writing on this show is still relevant 30 years later. With any episodic show, you can jump in randomly. There are 52 episodes, and most of them are like 10-12 minutes long. The only overarching plot points are the Bigheads and their strange son, as well as the progression of Filbert and Dr. Hutchison's relationship. But even those episodes you can go in blind. It's just more rewarding to see the characters fleshed out. Time to watch Rocko's Happy Sack. It's early in the show, Rocko still has his signature catchphrase before the writers phased it out.
Grocery day can be a very dangerous day.
You don't need to be familiar with the world or characters, it's just an episode about an anthropomorphic wallaby going grocery shopping. You remember earlier when I said this show seems more geared towards adults than kids? Well, what kid can't relate to navigating the horrors of a mega sale at the grocery store? I love the cynical humor of this show.
Let's check the kitchen again. Maybe we'll find something there this time.
Rocko remains cautiously optimistic despite an empty fridge and paydays a ways away. Even the bugs are starving! Yet another example of the writer's personified metaphors. Lucky for our boy Rocko, there's a major sale going on today. Let's join Rocko as he navigates through the chaos of a packed grocery store. A Mad Max-style parking lot, confrontations with entitled customers, that one rickety shopping cart. I want to add one more quote from the Vanity Fair article because it feels especially well demonstrated in this episode. Contemplating the possibilities for an appealing central character, Murray recalled a visit to a zoo where he noticed a wallaby in its enclosure, apparently oblivious to the general craziness around it. He was like the eye of the hurricane, doing his best to stay calm in trying circumstances. Murray recognized a kindred spirit, an analogy for his own struggles coping with adulthood. "I was Rocko," he said. I feel like now's a good time to mention the special. It released on Netflix in 2019, so 23 years after the show ended. If you want to watch it, I highly recommend watching 2 episodes from the show first. I Have No Son and Wacky Deli. It adds some necessary context, especially the first one. If you don't want me to spoil the special, I'll put a timestamp on screen. You have been warned. In a word, I thought the special was okay. The animation was great. There were tons of Easter eggs / callbacks to the series. I enjoyed the meta commentary. But for the most part, I don't think it stands well on its own. It's definitely better if you're already familiar with the show. Before I get too into it, I want to tell y'all a very brief synopsis. Rocko and friends have been stuck in orbit for the past 20 years. Personally, I thought this was a clever way for them to time travel from the 90s to the mid-2010s. They return from space to a world much different than the one they left.
Fellas?
Yeah?
I don't think we're in the 90s anymore.
And Rocko is not coping well, especially when he finds out about the cancellation of his favorite TV show. Then Rocko and friends scour the world for the show's creator in order to reboot a beloved 90s cartoon. Did I mention the meta commentary? My biggest complaint about the special is the story structure. It's 45 minutes long, which means each act is roughly 15 minutes. Rocko is our hero, obviously. Okay, but hold on, because I actually think the movie would have been better if Ed Bighead was the hero. But he can't be! Rocko's name is on the marquee! It's not Bighead's modern life! Act 1 is a lot of fun. There are some amazing moments in the montage, which basically showcases how the world has changed. I personally love the gritty superhero reboot, but Rocko is not having it. Canceling his favorite show was the last straw. I just want to emphasize what will eventually lead to the moral of the story. Rocko is struggling to accept change. Meanwhile, there's the parallel story of Ed Bighead and his estranged child, the creator of Rocko's beloved cartoon. Ed is also struggling to accept change. This is where I think the story gets a bit messy. Last chance to skip ahead before I spoil the major reveal. About halfway through the story, Rocko and friends find the creator. Turns out Ralph is now Rachel.
And I'm finally happy.
Go on, girl, find your truth. They all return back to O-Town with Rachel agreeing to showrun the Fatheads cartoon. Ed learns about Rachel's transition and rejects her, causing Rachel to leave, triggering the story's all is lost moment. The all is lost moment obviously being that Rocko won't get his cartoon. Hopefully you picked up on my sarcasm. This is exactly what I mean by Ed should have been the hero. Rocko's motivation in reviving his favorite cartoon is incredibly shallow and self-serving, and he reluctantly learns the moral at the end only after it's spelled out for him. Whereas Ed goes on the emotional journey. Ed is the one who organically learns the moral being that change is inevitable and to embrace it or else you'll miss out on the important things in life. Yet the narrative prioritizes Rocko. Also, I just need a rant about how the moral is presented. Just before the finale, there's a character that pops up called the Whins of Change. A bit on the nose, but okay. And I think they should have either completely cut him or had him in the beginning to hint at the lesson before our heroes were willing to accept it. During this part, I just kept thinking, oh my god, I get it! Be subtle about it! Like, Rocko mentions it to Bighead, then Cloud Dude mentions it to both Rocko and Bighead, then Bighead mentions it to Rocko. It reminds me of Netflix's whole dumb it down because everyone's on their phones thing. Maybe it's for the benefit of kids who need things spelled out for them. Maybe it's to lighten up an otherwise tense moment with some comic relief. Ugh. Despite all my complaining, I enjoyed the special for the most part. Bev is amazing, as always.
I just found these shoes in her size.
I love the commentary on how the animation industry has changed and about how soul-sucking monetizing your passion can be. It's a great compliment to the Wacky Deli episode, which commented on the commercialization of the animation industry. It's also really cool to see the comparison of cel-drawn versus digital animation. I think the strongest part of the story was definitely Ed and Rachel's relationship, despite having previously reconciled in the I Have No Son episode. And the Bighead family reuniting in the end was quite heartwarming. I tried to be concise with this section, but as you can see, I clearly had a lot of thoughts. I had a lot of fun researching this show, and as you can clearly see, I think it still holds up really well. Let me know if you watch it. I highly recommend the Vanity Fair article. There's so much more that I didn't address. I feel like Rocko's has been largely forgotten about despite being such a huge cultural cornerstone. It's how Tom Kenny got his first foray into voice acting, and now he's a prominent pillar in the animation industry. It was a major stepping stone for Steven Hillenburg. The experience he got as creative director was paramount in making SpongeBob. But yeah, thanks for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Rocko being so hungry and seeing Spunky in the oven as a roast reminds me of that Looney Tunes episode where the two dudes are stranded on a deserted island and picture each other as food. I think it's really cool watching animation and being able to see what inspires the writers. Like, obviously they would have grown up with Looney Tunes as kids, and now you see that, like, inspiration in their work. I think about that with, like, modern animation too. The 2010s had a lot of like anime inspired stuff because like those writers slash showrunners grew up with Toonami, like watching anime on Toonami, and it's really cool. It's like it's really cool. Like you can picture like a little kid and they're like watching their favorite cartoons and they're like, I want to do that. I want to be a cartoonist someday. And they start like, you know, drawing like Bugs Bunny or whatever. And now they're adults and they're making their shows and they're pulling from that inspiration from when they were kids, from what got them originally inspired to animate in the first place. I don't know. I think that's really cool.